A year into his tenure, SummerSlam has become the Triple H show, with a massive changing of the guard happening in 2022 and another one here in 2023. That's what we're reviewing today in 10 minutes. Names like Ronda Rousey, who were causing problems with their contract for Triple H, left by her own request. But more telling, names like Drew McIntyre, Brock Lesnar, Charlotte Flair, huge names and in many ways the reliable hands of years previous, were beaten clean and moved sort of in the days afterwards further down the card. Brock Lesnar not been seen since. Also, names like Jey Uso, who the entire bloodline story was built around, was essentially smacked down and told, no, this isn't for you. Let's go through the matches and explain exactly how Triple H sent a message to the locker room with SummerSlam 2023. We start with Ricochet versus Logan Paul. Logan Paul, a clear favourite of Triple H, and is actively bringing in the next generation of viewers. This was that moment at the Royal Rumble when Ricochet and Logan Paul smacked bodies into each other, the less meaty men still slapping meat. Apologies if that sounds reductive, because it was awesome. The match was fantastic, 20 minutes of pure high-flying, smashing into each other, and I absolutely loved it. It's the biggest match Ricochet has had, and yes, that includes the WWE Championship match he had against Brock Lesnar, because in that match, he was squashed and battered and thrown around. Logan Paul in this one did come out the winner, building back some of the credibility he lost in subsequent matches with Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns, but Logan Paul has proven what he can do, what he can deliver, and the eyes that he can bring. This was a great way to open SummerSlam. We moved quickly into Cody Rhodes versus Brock Lesnar, a feud that had way gone past its sell-by date. I'm very glad that Cody Rhodes won. I'm not very happy that Brock Lesnar, who'd every week attempted to break or successfully broken Cody Rhodes' arm, got away with a handshake at the end of it. Cody Rhodes was shown to be a bit of a sap, shall we say, on that one. It was a difficult match in that they'd already done a lot of their spots, and they did have to work over the fact that Cody, who his character and personality seemed to be the perennially injured guy and ow my arm, was able to deliver something that they haven't done before, and they didn't quite manage it, but it was serviceable enough. It kept Cody Rhodes in the public eye, and it was a good send-off to Brock Lesnar. He will be signing a new contract before returning, quite possibly with the UFC in there as well. The third match is where we start to see the full retelling of the Triple H story. The Slim Jim SummerSlam Battle Royal featuring 25 people and a win for LA Knight. A match that was expected to be on SummerSlam for the United States Championship between Santos Escobar and Austin Theory was kicked off the card to make room for a big moment for LA Knight. It was a reassurance by the WWE to the fans that things were going to go well for LA Knight and created a good opportunity for him to stand tall. That said, it felt like a bit of a meaningless pop because since then he's been working with The Miz. He's been featuring regularly, but this did not provide much in the way of a platform. The fourth match is one that's going to be talked about for years and not in a good way. Shayna Baszler defeated Ronda Rousey, and Ronda Rousey rode off into the sunset in an MMA rules match. This match was not good. In many ways, the TKO launch, the Endeavour deal that's finally gone live recently, was very telling to what was going to happen here. This was, look what happens if we bring the UFC to the WWE. And the answer was, it's bad. The fans don't care, the fans aren't invested, and the fans really weren't invested in each of these individuals. Certainly they were more invested in Shayna Baszler, as indeed I was as well, but the Ronda Rousey experiment, the first time round, went down as a complete success. The second time round went down as an unmitigated failure. Ronda Rousey, unfortunately, in her second run, didn't recapture the magic, and for some reason, nobody really got behind her in or out of the WWE. The fifth match was Drew McIntyre losing clean in less than 15 minutes to Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship. This was a match they wanted to do at this year's WrestleMania, but compounding injuries to Drew McIntyre prevented them from doing so. Sheamus involved in the match instead. Great opportunity for him, and he was able to prove what he can do even further due to the chemistry he has with those two men. Without Sheamus, this match felt like it was lacking something. It felt brief, and even though it was hard-hitting, it was intense, it was a fun watch, really the big takeaway from this match is that Drew McIntyre is not a main eventer in Triple H's world. He's really not had the big moments under Triple H, especially since Clash at the Castle. He's just not considered that big a deal anymore. And it's a difficult one because a lot of the WWE is being built around Drew McIntyre. And early in the COVID era, when he first won his championship, it really did make it a little bit difficult because he had no fans there, he had no audience, and now he has no real backing. Drew McIntyre's contract is coming up at the, after WrestleMania next year. We'll wait and see what actually happens with him. I'm not the most excited because even if he does sign a new deal, I'm not sure he'll get the championship opportunities he is looking for to encourage him to do so. Drew McIntyre is a very talented man, but it's difficult to say for certain that he's going to be a top champion under Triple H. Next up, the top championship for Raw under Triple H, Seth freaking Rollins wrestling Finn Balor. Now, a large part of the intrigue here was Damian Priest, and would Damian Priest get involved as he did in the previous match at Money in the Bank. Damian Priest did get involved, as did Dominic Mysterio, and unfortunately this very much worked against Finn Balor. Finn Balor wouldn't necessarily have won anyway. He was rescued this time by Damian Priest, but they were not able to get it together. The entire championship run of Seth Rollins up until this point was in aid of Judgment Day, and Judgment Day really didn't need it. That said, Seth Rollins and Finn Balor have a natural chemistry that I find extremely enjoyable, and they provided another classic here. The two men just don't know how to put on a bad match, and I ain't going to be the one to teach them. Very enjoyable, very rewatchable, a little bit overbooked, and a little bit derivative when it comes to their previous match. It's just not focused enough on Seth Rollins and his championship for me. Next up in the penultimate match, or what was to be the penultimate match, the women's triple threat for the WWE Women's Championship, that being Bianca Belair, Charlotte Flair and the champion Asuka. Now, Bianca Belair did pick up the win here, and she was the story. In many ways, it was reductive of Asuka as champion and reductive of Charlotte Flair as challenger. Of someone of her caliber and the name value, this was all about Bianca Belair. In the weeks that preceded it, it was all about Iyo Sky and her briefcase, as well as, of course, the connection with Bayley. Now, Iyo Sky did end up being pretty involved afterwards, but she was not involved in the finish of this match, or in fact this match at all. Asuka was not able to really compete. She was eventually rolled up by Bianca Belair, while Bianca Belair was in a submission from Charlotte Flair after Bianca Belair had taken a serious beating. In many ways, I'm starting to feel like Bianca Belair has that sort of Steve Austin plot armor, where she's just impossible to beat. Yet, thankfully, this moment did come shortly afterwards. Asuka hasn't been featured too heavily since. She's been back and forth a little bit, took a break, and then returned recently. Charlotte Flair, much the same. But Charlotte Flair, they're working pretty hard at the moment to keep her a face. It's not definitively working, but they're doing the best that they can. Immediately after the match, Iyo Sky, backed up by Bayley and eventually Dakota Kai, came down to claim the championship using her Money in the Bank briefcase, successfully doing so against a supremely injured Bianca Belair. No involvement from Charlotte, no involvement from Asuka, and a grand total of 8 seconds of competition. Iyo Sky wins the championship. She's being built actively now. She has been over the last month or so. It'll be interesting when we get further into history. For these reviews, we can look at really the historical context. For now, Iyo Sky's championship reign has been average, but I would expect matches upcoming against Asuka, against Charlotte, against Bianca Belair will really define her pedigree. Finally, our main event was Roman Reigns defending not just the undisputed WWE Heavyweight Universal Championship, but also the Tribal Chiefdom against Jey Uso. And the big giveaway that this match was going to go the way that it did was the introduction of the Tribal Chiefdom. The entire Bloodline storyline, 3 years in the making, seemed to be building towards a huge moment and a championship victory for Jey Uso. This did not happen. Instead, they've moved Jey Uso away from Roman Reigns onto Monday Night Raw to continue his build, but it looks like running away. I think back to when Big E won the championship from Bobby Lashley. Even though every single week he'd hover around Roman, he never even attempted to do so. Wrestlers are scared of Roman Reigns, and this firmly put Jey Uso in that camp. It was also the night when Jimmy Uso turned on Jey Uso, and while it's only a month and a half in, I've got to say that has so far come down as one of the worst decisions the Bloodline, and in fact the writers of the Bloodline, have ever made. Triple H made choices with this pay-per-view. To bring Drew McIntyre down the card, to bring Charlotte Flair down the card, and to formally remove Ronda Rousey from the card altogether. It was a huge changing of the guard, including the championship win for Iyo Sky, and a focus on younger, developing talent. Gunther as another example. Logan Paul getting more involved. Shayna Baszler picking up a win. The one exception is business as usual for Roman Reigns. And you've got to say, unfortunately, Cody Rhodes seems like he's going to be the long-term focus, whereas I wish it was Solo Sikoa. That's been my review of SummerSlam 2023 in just 10 minutes. Check out my review of Payback, which will be on the screen now, and I'll see you next week for my review of Money in the Bank. See you then.